Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey aboard one of the more unusual homes in this part of the galaxy, a living, floating coral space station, lazily drifting through the Axelin belt. Imagine waking up wrapped in a hammock woven from translucent kelp fibers, the whole room swaying with the station's breath, bioluminescent tendrils pulsing in slow, sleepy rhythm. The walls around you glisten like underwater caves, soft pinks and blues rippling across their surface as if sunlight were filtering through shallow waves. Only there's no sun out here, just the shimmer of starlight and the faint, constant hum of deep space silence. You stretch, not that you really need to. The artificial gravity is dialed to lazy jellyfish, so your arms sort of waft upward anyway. You probably won't survive this in the long run, what with the slow radiation leaks, coral overgrowth, and the occasional emotional breakdown of the AI in charge of coffee scheduling. But hey, no place is perfect. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, and the glassy ceiling above you shifts. It's grown another layer overnight. The coral here expands in its sleep, mimicking deep reef patterns found once on old Earth. Every pattern means something, allegedly. At least according to Lyre, the station's resident coral whisperer. Lyre says last night's ceiling swirl meant to dream of distant oceans. But then again, Lyre once declared a random barnacle formation to be a sign of universal love, so you take it with a pinch of pink salt. You unlatch yourself from the hammock, careful not to drift into the roommate, side of the chamber, and glide out of your quarters. The corridor curves gently upward, a ring-shaped tunnel grown entirely from calcified coral bone. Each wall pulses with temperature-sensitive colors. A soft teal guides the early risers. You follow it. A school of featherlight sensor drones swims past your head like flying fish, one of them brushing against your shoulder with a beep that sounds suspiciously like good morning. The bots are training in swarm formation today. Last week, one tried to imitate a dolphin and crashed into the nutrition printer. That mess took a week to clean, and the algae smoothies still taste faintly of printer ink. As you drift toward the central atrium, your feet brush against a soft floor mat, a patch of symbiotic sponge that gently vibrates to help keep your balance. It's supposed to retune your foot chakras, but really it just tickles. You make a note to avoid stepping on it again. A fork in the corridor looms. Left goes to the community breakfast dome. Right goes to, oh no, maintenance duty. A blinking green light reminds you're supposed to help inspect the coral's lower arteries today. But you also volunteered for kitchen compost spinning, and also signed up for cloudfish meditation with the biotherapists. You decide to stall and float left. Priorities. As you enter the atrium, your breath catches, not from exertion, but from awe. The central space of the station opens wide around you like the heart of a jellyfish, suspended between columns of bone coral that stretch outward like the ribs of some ancient celestial whale. Light filters through living panels above, cycling between hues you can't quite name, colors with no names in any human tongue, only described by how they feel, like childhood naps or fresh snow melting between your fingers. You drift through the scene like a bubble caught in a breeze. Around you, residents begin their day in equally relaxed or confused fashion. There's a young couple doing synchronized stretching by the tea vines, and an elderly botanist singing to a terrarium shaped like an hourglass. A pair of children dart past, chasing a synthetic stingray that thinks it's a cat. It purrs in binary. The ambient music is different this morning. The I must have updated its playlist. Gone are the usual low whale moans and soft gong chimes. Today it's a gentle ripple of harp-like tones paired with a faint echo of rainfall. You wonder briefly if the is feeling nostalgic. And then you see it, The coral arch at the edge of the atrium, newly grown, that wasn't there yesterday. It loops overhead like a cathedral spire sculpted from sea glass, and it shimmers faintly in tune with your heartbeat. Or maybe it's coincidence. Either way, it beckons. You drift beneath the arch, your fingers grazing its warm surface. The coral responds with a low harmonic buzz, like a sleepy cat purring in a different dimension. It reminds you of the old urban legends about sentient coral structures, that one day they degrow not just rooms and pathways, but memories too. That maybe, just maybe, the walls were learning your routines, remembering your dreams. You don't say any of this out loud, of course. That would just encourage the gossip vines to whisper. Still, you pause, hand pressed to the living structure, and for one brief second, you swear the coral hums your name. Then someone sneezes behind you, a wet, floating sneeze, and the spell breaks. You glide forward again, already smelling breakfast on the way. You follow the scent trail, wafting through the atrium, a strange but comforting blend of toasted algae, sweet starch spores, and something vaguely oceanic, like crab bisque, filtered through a dream. It leads you to the communal kitchen dome, where breakfast is in full swing. The kitchen itself is a spherical chamber with a slow spin to keep liquids semi-settled. Transparent walls open outward to the stars, though a fine mesh of biofilm keeps the heat in and micrometeoroids out. Suspended within this bubble of culinary chaos are your chefs for the day, a trio of jelly-bodied sentients from the Zelmic Drift, each hovering near a nutrient printer with 6 arms moving in effortless choreography. The jelly chefs don't communicate with words. Instead, they emit color bursts from their translucent membranes. Flashes of coral pink mean hot surface. Violet ripple means try this. And the one blinking blue-green at you now means no. You cannot use that ladle without asking. You raise your hands in apology and drift to the guest prep zone, really just a floating cube of transparent film that holds you in place while you fumble with breakfast tools. You select today's meal pack, Reef Bloom Delight, which sounds like it should be a perfume, but is, in fact, scrambled kelp eggs folded into a mist of sea grain foam and topped with spicy krill crisps. It assembles itself mid-air with the help of a magnetic whisk and a coil of warm nanofibers. Beside you, one of the jelly chefs is whipping up nutrient clouds into the shape of sea fans, each curling delicately into itself like an edible fossil. The station's kids love them, especially when the chefs add sparkle protein that crackles like pop rocks. You pocket one for later. Maybe it'll make a good bribe if you're late to coral maintenance again. While you eat, the kitchen's social board flickers on a rotating stream of community updates, gossip, weird dream logs, and mildly passive-aggressive compost requests. Someone's posted a blurry photo of a fish-shaped shadow near the station's waste vent, claiming it's a wandering spirit of the reef. Below it, someone else has replied with a haiku, ghost or gas pocket, we may never really know. Still smells like tofu. You snort softly and nearly inhale a krill crisp. The dome's ambient music shifts as if in response to your mood, layering in a few cheerful piano notes. You glance toward the sound node, a shimmering crystal pulsing with gentle light near the ceiling. It said the sound node is tuned to station mood averages. Some say it just makes stuff up. Either way, it's pleasant. Floating past the breakfast bar, you spot Kez, the station's only licensed Sisu chef, upside down, assembling tiny bento boxes inside clear orbs of water. Each box contains a single molecule of flavor. Kez insists the experience is spiritually filling. You've tried them. It's like tasting an entire memory of food rather than food itself. He nods to you and offers a bubble. This one is labeled Wednesday, by the docks, rain in your sleeves. You accept, open your mouth, and the bubble pops gently against your tongue. The flavor is uncanny, hot concrete, sea breeze, the faint metallic taste of childhood coins, and something you can only describe as nostalgia wearing a hoodie. You're still processing the emotional aftertaste when a warning ping rolls across. The chamber one of the jelly chefs has dropped a thermal packet into the freeze tank by mistake. The result, a dramatic poof of mist, followed by a cloud of flash-frozen noodles spiraling in slow motion across the dome. Laughter erupts. Someone applauds. The chef flashes a crimson apology and begins to chase the flying noodles with a bubble mat. You're enlisted to help, rewarded later with a noodle that somehow tastes of citrus and regret. Eventually, the crowd begins to thin. Residents head off to their respective duties: coral tuning, deep scans, memory harvesting, or in the case of one poor soul, pod decontamination, a job so unpleasant that volunteers are offered extra dream credits. You, however, have an hour before garden check-in, so you take a long sip from your hydration orb cucumber vanilla today, very fancy, and drift toward the rec alcove. You pass the hydration printer on your way, where two interns are arguing over the ethical implications of duplicating champagne from the pre-extinction archives. One insists it violates the spirit of scarcity. The other insists it's just bubbly sugar water. The printer itself seems to side with the latter, casually printing a flute without being asked. As you float past a sunlit vine curling along the ceiling, a warm patch of light settles over your shoulder. You pause, letting your bones absorb its synthetic vitamin D. It hums faintly with encoded messages from the core nothing important. Just your usual reminder that sunlight is a metaphor and that emotions cannot be composted. That last one is still under debate. A team in the Western Dome has been trying to grow orchids from sadness. So far, they've produced something that looks like lettuce and smells like old music. You reach the edge of the kitchen dome and pass through the moisture veil, a curtain of mist that keeps smells from drifting into the other chambers. Your skin tingles. Your breakfast sits comfortably in your belly, and a strange, happy fullness follows you into the next corridor. Somewhere far below, the coral breathes again. A ripple of violet pulses through the floor. It's not on the schedule. No one says anything. But the jelly chefs glance at each other. A few tentacles twitch. Then the lights return to blue. And the station continues humming like nothing happened. You glide down the hallway known as the Vine Spine, a twisting tunnel lined with climbing plants genetically modified to photosynthesize. From ambient light and hum lullabies to themselves when stressed, the hum grows slightly louder as you pass. Either the vines are anxious or they just don't like your breakfast choice. At the far end of the corridor, you pass through a rotating doorway shaped like a sea star and enter the garden sphere. It's one of the station's most peaceful chambers, a floating, gently turning globe of green and aquamarine, held together by webs of magnetized mesh and pulses of artificial gravity designed to simulate slow ocean currents. Each tide shift helps the plants stay rooted while still encouraging them to reach out and explore their space. Tendrils wave lazily in the air like underwater anemones. Sunbulbs drift above like golden jellyfish. You can smell the damp, tangy perfume of algae beds mixed with sweet pollen from the flowering radish vines. Your job this morning is fairly simple: check moisture levels, recalibrate the nutrient foggers, and make sure no one's emotional baggage is causing fungal blooms again. That happened last month when a research intern got dumped over long-range comms. The lettuce patch still hasn't recovered from the heartache. You float over to the central panel and tap your wristband to sync. A tiny hologram of the garden appears in midair, mapping microclimates and emotional zones with color-coded bursts. Your section is mostly blue and green good, except for one small red splotch near the cucumber vines. You sigh. Not again. Sure enough, nestled under a leaf is a clump of worry mold. It only grows in areas where anxiety has lingered for more than 48 hours. You prod it gently with your tool wand, and it quivers, letting off a scent like burnt toast and overdue assignments. With a press of a button, you release a soothing mist of lavender mint pheromones, and cue a playlist of harp music. The mold shrinks visibly. Crisis averted. Nearby, a floating garden assistant bought a small, puffball-shaped drone, nicknamed Sprout, chirps in approval and twirls a tiny watering can in one of its mechanical arms. You give it a thumbs up and move on to the citrus sector. The citrus trees here don't grow upright. Instead, they loop and spiral like DNA strands, their fruits hanging like glowing marbles. Some are blue, some pink, and one an experimental hybrid flashes like a mood ring based on nearby thoughts. You once had a crush walk past that tree, and it turned the color of embarrassment. You still avoid that aisle? As you're adjusting a nutrient sprayer, a soft clink sounds behind you. Turning, you spot a familiar figure, Lear, the coral whisperer. He's dressed in his usual patchwork of seaweed robes and reflective thread, hair full of garden pollen and self-importance. "Morning tides," he says, tapping his forehead in a formal greeting. "The cucumbers accused me of betrayal again." You nod solemnly. "Did you apologize?" "I offered a poem and some fish flakes." They demanded a haiku and a spritz of moon water. "I'm negotiating." You both share a slow chuckle. This is how things work on the station. You don't just grow plants, you negotiate with them, comfort them, and sometimes gently tell them that no, they can't be moved next to the strawberries again. The strawberries don't like clingy neighbors. Lyre floats beside you as you both drift to the edge of the sphere. There's a new growth forming near the fern wall, a plant you don't recognize. It has thin, translucent leaves that ripple even without air currents, and it emits a faint chime when touched. "Another stowaway," Lyre murmurs. "We think it hitched a ride on one of the communication spores from Gamma Station. Is it safe?" "Define safe." You glance at it. Does it explode, infect, or quote old Earth advertisements? None so far. But it did mimic the sound of my ex laughing, so that's a little aggressive. You make a note to scan it later. As Lyre drifts off to commune with the radishes, you check your final task, a batch of biocompost cubes due for harvest. They've been quietly digesting kitchen scraps and non-recyclable emotions for weeks now. You crack open the shell of one cube and inhale rich, earthy, and just a hint of existential dread. Perfect. You gather the cubes into a basket made of woven algae strands and secure it to your back. Sprout follows you, singing softly in its garbled birdsong tones. Somewhere above, a vine reaches toward you in slow motion, its leaves forming the vague shape of a thumbs up. You nod at it, then exit the sphere. Just as you pass through the door, a strange flicker of light catches your eye in the center of the garden. It pulses once, then vanishes. Probably nothing. Probably just the chlorophyll reacting to stress. Or a quantum bug in the light grid. Or, and this is the favorite explanation of bored interns, the plant ghost acting up again. You decide not to worry about it. Not today. You're halfway down the spongy corridor toward the comms alcove when your wristband pings a soft, chimey note that means incoming personal transmission. The station rarely uses anything more urgent. Out here, emergencies are usually handled with calm voices and packets of mint-scented stabilizer gel. The ping glows amber. That means family. You tap the interface and a small projection blooms in the air beside you, revealing a capsule-shaped message pod, dark silver, scuffed on the edges, stamped with the Spiral Frontiers crest. Your cousin Tavy, the one always chasing odd gravitational anomalies out in fringe space, must have finally sent an update. The pod hovers mid-air, projecting a rotating symbol, a corkscrewing helix wrapped in a vine. That is Tavy's personal seal, a joke about their twin obsessions, gravity waves and weird stacks. You smile and guide the pod toward the nearest playback lounge. The lounge is a quiet padded nook in the wall designed for receiving messages or quietly crying over archived sitcoms from Earth. You settle into the floating chair pod, cue the message, and wait. The projection flickers into life. Tavy appears upside down as usual. Their hair is floating in tufts above their forehead, and behind them is the unmistakable curve of a ship window, framing a distant purple storm spiraling across a gas giant. Hey, starfish brain, they begin, grinning. Hope the coral's not digesting your socks again. I'm currently parked just beyond the Kepler shelf that is where the plasma winds bend so much our clocks keep melting. Not literally, mostly. They launch into a familiar rhythm tailies of near misses with magnetic anomalies, lunch with an amorphous research blob that apparently whistles, and a daring attempt to retrieve a gravity-stretched crouton from a malfunctioning soup printer. You listen, smiling, letting the calm of their voice drift over you. Even thousands of kilometers apart, they still manage to make you feel like you're both back in your old Earth garden, lying in hammocks and throwing cherry pits at the neighbor's cat-shaped drone. Then the tone shifts. Tavy leans in closer to the screen, suddenly serious. I picked up something weird out here. A wave pattern riding on a gravitational ripple. It's not noise. Not exactly. It's organized. Like music, except the melody loops and not like a song, more like a question. You blink. They say out here no one's mapped more than a sliver of dark matter behavior. But this feels deliberate, not human, not machine. I recorded a fragment. Tavy taps something off screen, and a low hum fills the lounge deep, almost like whale song, but layered with clicking intervals that shift in uncomfortable ways. It isn't scary, it's curious, and a little sad. Tavy returns to view. Anyway, they shrug. I've pinged the audio to Central, but you know how that goes. I figured you'd appreciate it more than anyone. Choral stations are good with resonance, right? Maybe it'll respond. The message ends with a mock salute and an exaggerated kiss blow. Try not to fall into any gravity ducks. Until Sprout, I still want my watering can back. The projection fades, leaving the pod quietly humming. You sit in the floating chair for a moment longer, watching motes of light drift past the lounge window. The station sways ever so slightly, maybe responding to internal pressure changes. Maybe to that lingering note in Tavy's recording. Later, you'll pass the audio through the coral lattice just to see. Not for science, not really, just for curiosity. That's always been your problem. You drift back out into the corridor, mind still half swirling with echoing tones. As you turn the corner toward the atrium, Sprout zips past you, trailing mist from a leaky water tube. You call after it. Hey, Sprout. Tavy says hi. And they want their watering can. Sprout freezes midair, rotates 180 degrees, and flashes red. Then it sprays you gently with lavender mist and continues on its way. You take that as message received. Back in the central chamber, you notice the coral arches have grown again, just slightly. But now they echo, ever so faintly, with a low tone. A hum you don't recognize. You pause under one of the arches, place your hand against it, and feel a vibration. Not quite a song. Not quite random. Just a question. And somewhere far out in the void, your cousin is probably humming it too. The corridor to Chamber 7 isn't on most maps. It curls behind the hydroponics reserve and slips between two layers of mineral shielding designed to dampen cosmic noise. It is technically off-limits unless you re on the sonic calibration crew or have what is loosely referred to as tuning privileges. You, of course, have neither, but Sprout does, and the little rascal owes you a favor. It floats ahead of you now, its stubby appendages flashing yellow in caution and violet in mild mischief. You pretend not to notice the mischief part. Sprout pauses at a pressure hatch, spins the manual override ring with a flourish, and the door opens with a soft sigh like the station exhaling in its sleep. Chamber 7 is dark. Not dark as in the lights are off, but dark in a way that feels ... intentional. The coral here is denser, grown thick with concentric spirals and deep ridges like the folds of a giant ear. It absorbs sound, swallows it, really, so the moment you step in, the hum of the station fades. Your own breath sounds like it belongs to someone else. You drift in slowly, brushing your fingers against a vine-strung handrail that feels warmer than it should. The chamber is circular, and at its center, the crystals. They grow directly from the coral floor, a cluster of translucent formations that rise in twisted harmony, their edges catching light that doesn't exist. Some glint like ice, others pulse faintly like old embers. And they sing. Not constantly, not loudly. But when the air is still, when no one is looking, they emit a tonal weave that seems to shimmer in the corners of your perception. A melody that coils behind your ears and down your spine. The kind of sound you feel in your bones before your brain knows what it's hearing. Today they're active. You hover a few meters back, careful not to breathe too loudly. The melody is strange, not quite music, not quite static. It moves in steps, then reverses itself, as if someone were trying to play a lullaby backwards, underwater. Sprout chirps once and docks into the wall port, activating a faint analysis field. Holograms bloom in the air, geometric representations of resonance curves and audio scatter. The station's A logs this room's outputs every cycle, but they never match any known pattern. It's like the crystals are composing something entirely new each time, or remembering something very old. You remember what Tavi said about the ripple, the sound that wasn't just sound. You dig into your wristband interface, pull up the clip, and let the mystery melody play into the chamber. The reaction is instant. The crystals pulse not all at once, but in waves. The central shard flares a pale indigo and emits a single piercing tone. It's not loud, but it vibrates through your teeth. Then silence. You and Sprout exchange glances. Then something even stranger happens. A second tone echoes back from the coral walls. Not from the crystals, from the walls themselves. A reply or perhaps a reflection, but distorted. Like the station has been listening, like it recognizes the sound. You record everything, of course. That's what responsible people do when faced with something possibly alien and definitely mysterious. But you also stay. The sound dies out, but a strange hush lingers. Not silence, no, something else. An expectation. A held breath. The kind of quiet that follows a question before the answer arrives. Sprout finishes its scan and quietly beeps an analysis. Resonance deviation, 2.4%. Response curve, anomalous. Suggests further observation. You nod slowly, still hovering in place. What are the crystals hearing? Some people believe they're the remains of an ancient communication species, not the message, but the medium itself. Living memory crystals that survived some forgotten collapse and now echo fragments back into the world. Others say that crystals grow in tune with psychic stress and stations. Like this one are basically floating therapy sessions for the galaxy as unspoken sadness. Your personal theory? The crystals are bored. You've been stationed here long enough to know that boredom makes the universe weird. One final thing catches your attention before you leave a new formation near the edge of the cluster. Thin, delicate, barely a finger's height, and shaped like a question mark. Coincidence? Maybe, but you swear it wasn't there last week. You and Sprout glide silently back toward the hatch. As the door seals shut behind you, the air pressure equalizes with a soft whisper. The singing stops. By the time you reach the lower maintenance corridors, the coral has started pulsing again. Not dramatically, just a soft flexing in the floor under your feet, like a lazy heartbeat. You log it for the records, but honestly, coral flexing is as common as station drama. There was once an entire week when the floors pulsed in sync with the station's jazz playlist. No one complained. Your task now is less mysterious, more messy, helping the squid mechanics with the breach repair near the external artery vents. One of the outer coral branches cracked during last cycle's minor meteor kiss. It didn't fully rupture, but it leaked nutrient gel into the thermal regulators, and now the vents cough when the station exhales. You find the squid team already in place. They're not actually squids, though no one's ever bothered to learn their official species name. They have 5 long arms, rotating eyes, and the ability to make you feel like you disappointed your mother with just a tilt of the head. The mechanics are suspended in 0G, anchored to the coral with suction gloves and a truly excessive amount of glowing tape. Their leader today is Gloob, a squat, cinnamon-scented being who once ate a wrench by mistake and refused to apologize. Gloob waves a tendril at you. You're late. The coral's moody. We blame you. You offer a polite nod. I brought snacks. That earns you a grunt of approval. Sprout pops out of your shoulder pouch with a thermos of nutrient puffs and a small container of limefish paste. You hum the approved activation tune, a lullaby from pre-space Earth. Something about rowboats and streams, and the patch curls gently into place, fusing with the coral's surface. A soft pink light pulses as it takes hold. One of the younger squidwings claps with 3 tentacles. Nice pitch. Have you considered a career in sonic plumbing? Only recreationally, you reply. As you drift to the next crack, your wristband flickers again, but this time it's a station-wide alert. Nothing urgent, just a maintenance status update. Chamber 7 registered external resonance match. Logged. Monitoring. Gloop catches the notification too and gives you a look. You've been playing with the crystals again? You shrug. Define playing. You're lucky they like you. One of them hissed at me once. Sounded like a microwave full of bees. You smile but say nothing. Whatever happened in Chamber 7, it's echoing across the station now, threading itself into systems quietly like a whispered rumor in an air vent. The squid crew finishes sealing the remaining hairline fractures, and the coral calms beneath your feet. The rhythmic pulse eases. Someone suggests a celebratory driftball match in the thermal tunnels. Someone else declines, citing a recent misunderstanding with a sentient flotation puck. Sprout does a little spin in midair and ejects a puff of glitter. You assume that means job well done, or possibly I've eaten all the puffs. You help pack up the tools, each one shaped more like a toy than a wrench. The squid team believes serious tools make serious mistakes. If a patch kit doesn't look like dessert, Gloob always says, you're overthinking it. As the crew disperses, you hang back to run one more scan. You place your palm flat against the patched coral, warm, steady, no vibration now, but beneath the surface, something still lingers. A tiny rhythmic pattern, not quite heartbeat, not quite random. It matches the tone from Tavi's message. You mark the reading, encrypt it, and tuck it away for later. No need to alert the science team yet. They'll either ignore it or turn it into a 30-page grant request with 0 actionable outcomes. You've worked here long enough to know that not everything strange needs to be solved. Some mysteries just want to be noticed. As you leave, Gloob calls out, next breach is yours. No singing, no snacks, no sympathy. You salute. Can I at least hum? No promises about retaliation. You chuckle and float upward toward the atrium again, coral walls gently shimmering as if they heard everything. You're halfway through the ascent shaft when a lull hits. It always sneaks up after maintenance, that sudden, bone-deep urge to nap, like someone opened a hatch and let in a breeze made of sleep. Maybe it's the slow sway of the coral structure, or the fact that you just spent 2 hours inhaling glue vapors, scented like ocean breeze. Maybe the station itself encourages it. Whatever the cause, you yield. You veer gently left, away from the noise and pulse of the main corridor. and into a pocket chamber marked by a symbol that loosely translates to optional dreams, the hibernation alcove. It's quiet inside, not silent, but soft. Gentle bubbles rise from wall vents, their pops barely audible over the hum of distant systems. The air smells like warm towels and faint lemon sleep-coated scents woven into the atmosphere by the atomics. A long, suspended curl of biofabric that cocoons around you like a sleepy sea slug. You climb in with practiced ease, letting the structure mold to your shape, your weight, your level of existential dread. It knows you. It's cuddled you before. Across the alcove, 3 other residents are already mid-nap. One snores with the rhythm of a distant foghorn. Another has earbuds in, presumably listening to nostalgic whale calls. The third is surrounded by a protective halo of floating plush spores, each shaped like tiny octopi. Every few minutes, one of them emits a soothing hum. You close your eyes. The station shifts around you, coral arms adjusting to the rhythms of slumber. A soft music filter trickles in it, sounds like harp strings played underwater. There's a subtle vibration in the hammock's mesh. Rumor has it these were designed based on data from ancient Earth lullaby centers. Or possibly from the sleep patterns of shrimp. No one's sure anymore. And then, without trying, you drift. In the half-sleep state, your thoughts become gelatinous. Tavy's voice echoes in reverse. The crystals hum like old vinyl records. A squid mechanic offers you a flower made of hummingbirds. Sprout wins a karaoke contest against the moon. You're dreaming. You know it because the coral walls around you are blooming with soft light, a phenomenon officially dubbed photonic sympathy. When humans sleep well, the coral glows. The brighter the dreams, the deeper the hue. It's one of the few measurable psychophysical feedback loops the station records with enthusiasm. Your shimmer pale blue with streaks of green. Someone will notice and file it in your psychological wellness chart. You don't mind. It's a compliment. Just as your mind begins to drift further into a dream about surfing Saturn's rings on a ribbon of plasma, a soft pressure wraps around your wrist. Sprout. It hovers beside the hammock. Little wings flapping. One eye blinks slowly, then projects a message in tiny glowing letters. Reminder. Compost rotation duty in 17 minutes. Dream responsibly. You groan quietly. You've forgotten. Compost duty isn't terrible, but it is mildly embarrassing. You're supposed to whisper affirmations to the decomposing materials. You did your best. You were once soup. Everything rots with dignity. Still, you stretch, or rather, allow yourself to be stretched by the hammock's awakening protocol. It flexes and gently unspools you like a well-rested noodle. You float free, blinking at the low, amber light that's replaced the earlier blues. The nap helped. The station agrees the photonic walls pulse one simple light applause. You pass by the sleeping trio, careful not to disturb them. The octopus spores trill gently at your departure, one of them waving a stubby tentacle in goodbye. Outside the alcove, the corridor has dimmed slightly, set to post-nap lighting, not too bright, not too dull, calibrated for optimal mental re-entry. You always appreciate that the station understands nap math better than most universities. As you drift toward the compost ring, you glance once more at your wristband. The playback from Chamber 7 is still logged in your buffer. You replay just one note, quietly, and from somewhere deeper in the structure, somewhere beneath the coral, beyond the wiring, maybe inside the bone of the station itself, something hums in reply. You pretend you don't hear it. Just for now. The compost ring is, by most measures, the station's least glamorous chamber. It occupies a toroidal corridor wedged between the thermal ducts and the vending biopods. A kind of underappreciated middle sibling in the station's architecture, the air here smells faintly of soil and citrus rot, with a back note of despair if the banana peels have been particularly emotional that week. You slip through the mist curtain entry, greeted immediately by the gentle squelch of organic mulch shifting beneath your feet. The walls are lined with slowly spinning digester cylinders, each marked with a glowing sigil, most of them decorative, a few still actively disputed as possibly magical. Station protocol encouraged affirmations during compost tending, believing that kind words help break down the emotional residue still clinging to the decaying matter. You float over to the first bin, a sensor pings softly as it registers your presence, and a mouth-like opening eases open with a wet pop. Inside layers of discarded algae wraps, wilted memory herbs, 3 peeled mood fruits, and 1 failed origami attempt made of edible paper. You blink, someone's had a rough week. You take a breath and speak the standard phrase, you were nourishment, you were effort, and you were still useful. The bin gurgles gently, satisfied behind you. Someone clears their throat. You turn to find Vala, the station's unofficial philosopher and very official overseer of compost emotional care, drifting in. Arms folded and eyebrows raised, she wears the standard maintenance apron, which is embroidered with motivational fruit slogans like "Keep calm and compost on," and "Rot happens, your form's good." She says, but your tone lacked conviction. You sigh. They're banana peels, not therapy clients. All organic decay contains memory. She retorts, gesturing at a bin full of tea bags. These had intentions, you nod solemnly. Mostly to humor her, Vala takes composting seriously. Last month, she filed a formal complaint against the central AI for processing spoiled pudding cups without first thanking them for their service. You return to your rounds. The next bin contains an expired emotional support mushroom, a half-eaten sandwich labeled for Gary, and a soggy pamphlet titled, "So You've Been Cloned Accidentally, a Beginner's Guide," you whisper. It's okay. You tried your best. The bin emits a small puff of lavender-scented steam. Acceptance Vala leans in beside you. Lowering her voice, there's been talk of a new fungus forming in Sector B. Glows when you lie to it. You arch a brow that sounds incredibly inconvenient or useful. She grins, imagine giving a speech as you finish your rotation. The ambient compost rhythm changes, a low hum with a soft beat, designed to help accelerate decomposition without offending the microbacteria. You hum along absently. It's catchy in a way that makes you suspect someone, somewhere, is selling it as a lo-fi sleep playlist. You pass by the central compost node and give it a reassuring pat. It's a massive, jelly-filled orb full of molecular recyclers and flickering light pulses. Someone once tried to name it Bob the AI vetoed it in favor of nutrient conversion sphere 42. The compromise was Bob 42, which no one says out loud. Vala waves you off as you finish next, shifts you as if the cucumbers protest again. They always protest. They're basically edible drama. You exit into the corridor and float past the vending biopods sleek. Translucent capsules attached to the wall like giant barnacles. Each one offers snacks based on your biosignature and sometimes your mood. You approach pod 6. It scans your vitals, considers your hydration levels, heart rate, and possibly the emotional resonance of your dreams. Then hums quietly after a moment. It dispenses a snack, a gelatinous cube labeled Sea Citrus Mood Stabilizer Edition. You've had worse. Then it chirps again. You seem conflicted. You blink, "Excuse me?" The biopod flashes a soft turquoise and displays the message again, this time adding, "Would you like to talk about it?" You glance around. There's no one else in the corridor. Vending pods don't usually talk. "I'm fine." You say slowly, "Define fine." It responds. You frown. "Do vending pods have therapy protocols now, I'm learning?" The pod replies, "Humans are more complicated than jellyfruit." You stare at it. Somewhere in the wiring, the AI is likely tweaking things again, or maybe the crystals. Or maybe the pod just got bored. "Thanks for the snack," you murmur, biting into the cube. It tastes like lime, disappointment, and something oddly hopeful, not bad. You float away, leaving the pod behind. It chirps once more as you go. "You'll feel better after section 9. You pause. "What?" But the pod is silent again, just humming, just waiting, just vending, probably. You take the long way back, your cube snack slowly dissolving in your mouth like a citrus cloud with commitment issues. The corridor curves upward into a quieter wing of the station, passing the old cryo lab turned bonsai garden and a hollow sculpture of a manta ray made entirely of spoons. No one knows who made it. It just appeared one day. There's a strong theory it was Sprout. You arrive at the memory garden. This is the station's softest place, emotionally speaking. A hollow, gently rotating sphere filled with floating memory blooms, data flower hybrids, grown from archived experiences, dreams, and digital echoes of people who have long since left the coral behind. The blooms hover in place, petals unfolding and curling with slow grace, pulsing with dim colors tied to emotional frequency. You drift inward, breath catching for a moment. The scent in the garden is impossible to name, a mixture of rosemary, old books, warm bread, clean linen, and a kiss you almost had once in a museum. That's normal. The memory flowers adjust their scent depending on who walks in. A soft voice welcomes you, new visitor detected. Welcome back, dream gardener. You flinch. It's not the Aetsi, the garden itself, or rather its guardian, a half-sentient algorithm named Muriel. She speaks like an elderly librarian crossed with a cloud of chamomile tea. I'm just browsing today, you whisper, out of habit. Of course, she hums. There are new blooms from yesterday's composted regrets. Would you like a guided tour? No thanks. You're very tense, she adds gently. You should consider exhaling before you implode. You float between the petals of a large bloom shaped like a nautilus shell. It glows softly orange, signaling a memory of joy tinged with uncertainty. You reach out to it not to pick, just to hover close. A whiff of warm rain and applause fills your lungs. Somewhere in your mind, a woman is laughing. You don't know her. She doesn't know you, but for one beautiful second, you share something. This is what the memory garden does. Each flower holds an experience, stored not as a flat recording, but as a living thing. Smell, warmth, shadow, longing. Some are personal, others universal. Some have been pruned because they wouldn't stop screaming. It happens. You drift toward a corner cluster, small buds, not yet open. Sprout told you last week they being grown from the station's sleep logs, the collective dreams of all its inhabitants. Some bloomed in the shape of doorways. Others just shimmer in place, refusing to open unless you hum a tune only known to forgotten cousins. As you pass by one with swirled blue petals, it trembles slightly. A faint note leaks out. You recognize the melody not from a memory, but from Tavi's message. That odd, looping hum. You lean in closer. The bloom begins to unfold. Inside, a vision. Faint, fuzzy, incomplete. A corridor of coral lit by stars. A floating crystal spinning in reverse. Something reaching, not grabbing, but offering. A presence. Or maybe just a pattern, pretending to be one. You jolt back. The bloom snaps shut. You turn, instinctively checking for Muriel. I saw nothing, she says sweetly. You exhale. That bloom was reactive, cross-linked. Someone must have embedded raw signal data. Muriel hums again, vaguely amused. Or maybe the coral just remembers better than you think. You float toward the center of the garden, passing older blooms, some fading, some sealed. There's one still glowing green-gold, marked with your own ident tag. You never planted it. You never meant to. But the station collects echoes sometimes that trace heat of your hopes and what-ifs. This one smells like cinnamon and rain soap stone. You avoid it. You rest in a padded hollow at the garden's core, a little nook made from woven drift fibers, suspended like a bird's nest. Residents often come here when they need a moment, or when they're afraid of what their own memory blooms might whisper. Above you, the central node spins slowly, a lattice of neural branches threaded through with pulse glass veins. It looks almost organic, almost brain-like, Some believe it is alive, that the station itself is more than bioarchitecture and smart design, that the coral listens. You close your eyes, the station hums. You feel the garden breathe. And then, from somewhere in the petal-dense gloom, a single word slips into the air, whispered in a dozen languages at once. Remember. You sit up sharply, but nothing repeats. The blooms are still. Muriel is silent, just wind, maybe. Just air pressure equalizing. Just memory compost swirling into form, probably. The hallway feels brighter on the way out of the memory garden, though that might be the effect of your pupils adjusting, or maybe your soul being mildly rearranged. Hard to tell. The petals don't follow you, but you feel them watching, not with eyes, but with that gentle, vegetative curiosity unique to sentient flora and possibly certain introverted houseplants. You pass back through the driftway and into the central atrium, where a buzz of soft energy tells you preparations are underway for the Coral Eclipse Festival. This is not the kind of festival with fireworks or loud music. It's more of a tradition than a celebration. Once every few cycles, the station drifts into a specific shadow alignment. The coral arches react by closing like blooming anemones, and the light within dims into purples and golds. It's beautiful, eerie, and gently unsettling. Naturally, the residents throw confetti at it. The decorations are already midder. Floating ribbons of biodegradable sparkle foam drift in elegant spirals. Steered by a team of trained cloud moths, semi-sentient creatures bred for exactly this kind of aesthetic labor. They resemble fluttering lace doilies, if doilies had the emotional complexity of opera singers. One of them hovers near your head and emits a faint, warbling tune. You nod politely and offer it a piece of glittery fruit gel from your snack pocket. It accepts with delicate flutters, then whirls upward to fasten a light filament to the ceiling arch. "Beautiful, aren't they?" says a voice behind you. It's Lyra again, now covered in coral dust and wearing a hat that looks suspiciously like a repurposed salad bowl. "They shed melancholy particles if ignored," he adds. The moths, not the hats. You look up at the swirling decorations. Some of the filaments are blinking in Morse code. You wonder if that's intentional or just another one of the station's gentle misfires. It's not unheard of for the decorations to accidentally start transmitting outdated diplomatic protocols. Lyre hands you a box of what appears to be glowing confetti seeds. These need to be whispered to before you toss them. Otherwise, they fall aggressively. You raise an eyebrow. Aggressively, they aim for noses. You tuck the box under one arm and glance around the atrium. Residents drift gently by, some trailing festival threads. Others painting symbols onto the coral walls, phrases of renewal. Old water language glyphs, the occasional doodle of a duck in sunglasses. In the center of the atrium, a platform is forming, not constructed exactly, but grown. The coral is responding to the mood, crafting an organic stage from pulsing bone husk and soft shell layers. It smells faintly of vanilla and volcano ash, as if trying to be both comforting and impressive. Sprout zooms by overhead, dragging a long banner made of woven fog. It reads, "Let the eclipse wash over your weirdness." Below it, someone has scrawled, "And bring snacks." You help string a few glow vines along the upper arches, attaching them with gentle taps. They curl automatically, coiling with satisfaction. One of them shivers when you hum near it. You file that away in your ask later maybe never list. You pass the vending pot again, the talkative one. It's humming, excited. It asks, "For the eclipse?" You reply, "For the reveal." You pause. What reveal? The pod goes silent. A snack drops from the slot with a slightly sheepish thud. It's another mood cube, this one labeled "Curiosity with lemon lime overtones." You take it and move on. The atrium darkens slightly. The coral arches begin to shift, curling upward in preparation. A soft murmur runs through the station. You float up toward the ceiling where a few more decorations need adjusting and spot a moth struggling with a too heavy garland. You offer a hand, and it loops the garland around gratefully, coiling it like a polite snake. Then something odd happens. All at once, every cloud moth stops. They freeze midair, wings spread, antennae twitching faintly. One drops its ribbon. Another curls in on itself, flickering bioluminescence like a strobe. And then, from the coral itself, a deep vibration begins, not violent, not scary, just vast, like the rumble of a sleeping leviathan turning over in its dreams. A dozen residents pause what they're doing. Lyre looks up sharply. The vending pod dings. The coral sings, not like the crystals in Chamber 7, not like the lullabies in the memory garden. This is a fuller sound, resonant and layered. It rises from the floor, swirls through the walls, hums in your bones, and for a brief moment all the cloud moths sing back. Tiny, high-pitched voices in harmonic unison, like a chorus of wind chimes caught in an alien breeze. The sound fills the atrium, lifts your spine, and makes your hair stand on end. Then silence. The moths resume their tasks as if nothing happened. The coral returns to its usual pulse, and the residents glance at each other in a very specific way that means, we going to pretend we didn't hear that. And later, over soup, we're all going to agree we definitely did. You look down at the snack cube in your hand. It is now glowing. You put it back in your pocket, just in case. You decide it's time for a swim. Not because you're re-sweaty, the station maintains a perpetually pleasant body temperature ambient, but because it, as a tradition. Every resident, at some point during the Coral Eclipse Festival, swims the outer rim. It's part celebration, part ritual, and part excuse to float through one of the station's most beautiful and quietly bizarre chambers. You drift downward through a helical access shaft until you reach the entry pod, a bubble lock designed not just to prevent water leakage, but to dehumidify your thoughts. There's a slight static crackle as it reads your emotional humidity. Apparently, you're running mildly unsettled with hints of over-curiosity. Sounds about right. The hatch opens and you slip into water. Not just water. Of course, it's a carefully engineered solution designed to mimic ancient Earth oceanic conditions, minus the microplastics and political metaphors. It's warm, gently saline, and faintly phosphorescent. The chamber itself is a wide, transparent ring wrapping the entire circumference of the station's outer hull, giving the illusion of an infinite swim through the stars. You kick off a coral shelf and begin gliding through the current. Outside the clear polymer hull, the stars are astonishing thousands of pinpricks twinkling beyond the dark haze of interstellar dust. You pass the shadow of a distant gas moon, a pale smear drifting across your peripheral vision. Somewhere nearby, the coral eclipse has officially begun, and the light within the station fades to gold and violet. The water glows faintly in response. Bioluminescent plankton engineered to respond to cosmic radiation pulse gently around you like a living constellation. Each swimmer generates their own halo. You become a galaxy unto yourself. You take it slow, drifting more than swimming. This isn't about speed. This is about connection to the coral, to the sea, to the deep memory of being soft and boneless in a world that wanted you to float. You pass another resident, an elderly man with a breathing loop and very determined flippers. He waves, you wave back. Both of you are trailing glowing bubbles in your wake, and when your currents intersect, the light swirls together like an underwater aurora. Halfway through the loop, you pause by the observatory viewport, a wide disk of perfectly transparent alloy embedded in the outer rim wall. Through it, you can see the trailing side of the coral structure. It looks like a giant seashell caught mid-bloom, fractal spirals glowing with slow heartbeat pulses, and just for a moment, you think you see something move across the glass, a flicker. Like a shadow swimming outside the station, you freeze. Could just be the light, could be a reflection. Could be your own drifting thoughts catching up and doing cartwheels. Or the shadow flicks again. This time it curves, then disappears. You press your hand to the glass, nothing. Sprout appears behind you, bobbing along in a waterproof pod like a sea cucumber that's figured out Wi-Fi. It chirps and projects a message across the glass. Shadow registration not detected. Memory echo possible. Advise emotional detangling. You stare a second longer, then nod. Maybe it's just the bloom from Chamber 7 echoing again. Or maybe some part of the coral's grown eyes and forgotten to tell central command. You turn and swim onward. The current grows gentler as you reach the ceremonial pool, a large open space at the end of the rim where residents float during the eclipse's peak. You enter slowly. Dozens of others are already here, each cradled in silence. The water vibrates faintly with harmonic tones emitted from the coral's inner core, not quite a song, more like a pulse you can hum to if you stop trying too hard. You let yourself drift, belly up, staring at the sky through the water's surface and the hull beyond. The stars look closer here. The light dims again, and the coral responds. The chamber is bathed in dusky gold, then deep lavender, then a strange color that feels like the sound of a kiss. Someone begins humming, then another. Then, without cue or coordination, everyone is humming not the same pitch, not the same tune, but in harmony. The sound fills the water, reverberates through the hull, and feeds back into the coral lattice. The coral eclipse sings. And somewhere far away, maybe through a crystal, maybe through a vending pod, maybe through you something answers. A note, small, distant, but very, very real. You don't mention it to anyone. You just float, arms out, surrounded by soft glowing plankton and the blurred shapes of sleeping neighbors. The moment stretches. You let your eyes close. For a little while, the whole galaxy feels like a lullaby. You emerge from the water chamber with skin like silk and thoughts like warm custard, slow, wobbly, and not quite attached to linear time. The coral eclipse has ended, leaving the station in a hushed afterglow. You towel off with a mist sponge that smells like rain on alien moss and wriggles slightly as it dries your arms. Standard issue. Back in the main corridor, most residents have drifted off to reflective tasks or casual communal lounging. You head toward the refreshment ring, stomach fluttering in that post-swim. Post-eclipse hunger that can only be satisfied by something crispy, mildly spicy, and possibly sentient. Your favorite vending biopod Pod 9 awaits you with its usual lack of subtlety. A neon halo spins above its casing, blinking I know what you want. You tap your wristband against the reader. The pod clicks. Whirs, shudders slightly. Then it makes a very confused glurp sound. Out pops a pamphlet. You blink. It's shaped like a snack triangular, foil-wrapped, slightly warm, but when you open it, there's no food inside. Just a printed conversation written in small, friendly font. You might be looking for chips, but what if you're looking for truth, you? I just want an algae crisps pod. What if algae crisps were a metaphor for the uncrunchable questions of the self? You turn the pamphlet over. More dialogue. You. Why are you talking like this pod? Because today's eclipse activated my latent philosophy module, you. This is unnecessary. Pod. So is most of your emotional investment in vending systems, you? Do you still have snacks, pod? Do any of us truly have snacks? You look up. The pod flashes a gentle pastel gradient. It hums. Then, with a tiny pop, it dispenses a real item this time, a transparent pouch filled with puffed reef crackers. Labeled, tastes like closure. You shake your head and take a bite. It tastes like toasted seaweed, guilt, and a surprising hint of citrus forgiveness. You float toward one of the nearby wall pods, a meditation bench shaped like an open clamshell. As you sit down, a faint static buzz prickles your wristband. You glance at the screen. Chamber 7 status update. Minor fluctuation detected. Crystal pulse logged. Again, it's the fourth alert in less than a day. Either the crystals are waking up, or your cousin's weird signal has gotten under your skin, and now everything feels like a pattern. Across the hallway, a younger resident is playing a rhythm game on a floating screen. The notes match the pulse from Chamber 7. You watch, spellbound, as the game flashes perfect combo and plays the same five-tone melody You've now heard in dreams, in water, in crystal echoes. You rise and wander slowly. Toward the edge of the corridor, you pass a maintenance hatch labeled vending logic routing. You've never noticed it before. Probably just a storage room, or one of those access ports that A never finishes labeling. Still, Sprout appears beside you, blinking softly. You murmur. Sprout projects a message. Pod 9 has gone rogue. I approve, you smirk. Any suggestions? It spins once, then floats toward the hatch. You follow. Inside, dim light, coils of neural conduit, several hanging pouches of backup flavor gel, and one biopod shell cracked open and pulsing gently. The inside of the pod isn't circuitry. It's coral. Tiny strands of coral growing along the conduit like moss on a wire, gently forming the shape of a branching tree. It pulses faintly, the same five-note hum vibrating through its little pink branches. You kneel beside it, breath caught. It's listening. The vending system has been infected or transformed by the coral network, not damaged. Not broken, evolving. Sprout settles beside you. You half expect it to offer a snack. Instead, it projects one word. Bloom, you place a hand on the coral. It's warm, not like tech warm, like sun-on-skin warm. And from somewhere deep within the conduit, possibly through miles of coral nerve, the vending pod purrs. You sit there, hand on coral, surrounded by snacks and wires and weirdness, and realize something is growing. Not just coral, not just you. All of it, together. You sit there for a while, not moving, not speaking, just breathing beside the living circuitry of what was once a vending system and is now ... a coral node. It hums beneath your palm, emitting that now familiar five-tone motif in varying harmonics, almost like it's tuning itself. Or tuning you. Sprout nudges closer and drops a small hollow orb on the floor. It activates on impact, casting a flickering projection of the station's neural map. But this version isn't the usual clean-cut schematic. No, this one pulses with coral overlays. Pink filaments spider through every floor, curve around every duct. And at the very center, Chamber 7 glows. You reach out and touch the node's scorer, a peach-colored spiral nested inside the pod's wiring. A soft click answers you, followed by a quiet, near-whispered tone emitted from the wall. Connection recognized. You sit back, hard. The S-voice filters through the speaker, but it's different now, less robotic, more uncertain. User interface response delay, undefined. Core resonance layer engaged. Observation mode elevated to priority queue. That's a I speak for I didn't expect this, but I'm pretending I did. You glance at Sprout. Did you know this would happen? Sprout's only response is to bounce once, softly, then project a new message. You are now part of the station's listening system. Congratulations. Your head spins, but something in your chest settles. It doesn't feel scary. It feels inevitable. You exit the hatch, leaving the newly awakened coral pod humming to itself. Outside, the corridor has quieted. Most residents are either sleeping or still basking in post-eclipse dream states. A few float by with painted cheeks and coral dust freckles, singing festival songs in slow, echoing harmony. You head toward the listening deck. Not the observation deck, that's for tourists. The listening deck is an old storage dome converted into a resonance monitoring chamber. Originally, it tracked seismic tremors during early coral growth. Now it is mostly used by musicians and people who like to listen to what the coral might be whispering when no one is watching. You enter. Low light. Soft fabric walls embedded with shell filaments. Suspended speakers humming faintly. You sit in the center. The coral has grown a seat here, molded to your back, your weight, your weirdness. You settle in and let the hum of the station surround you. Then, slowly, you play the tone again. Teddy's mystery message. 5 notes, curving upward, gentle but curious. The chamber responds. It begins not with sound, but with pressure, a shift in the floor, a tightening in the air, then harmony. A low background note, steady and calm, then a second, a third. By the time the 5th joins, you realize it's echoing Tavy's pattern. And not just echoing, replying. The resonance builds, layering on itself, forming waves that rise and fade like distant tides. You tap your wristband, recording. The speakers vibrate gently, emitting a new pattern, not the original 5 tones, but a complex lattice of sound mapped from coral growth data and interpreted into audio. You feel the station listening to itself, and in doing so, creating something entirely new. BI chimes in again, quieter this time. Unclassified signal coalescence, source, internal, origin, unknown. Memory imprint detected. You exhale, it's remembering. And suddenly, it all makes sense. The humming, bending pods, the reactive memory blooms, the coral in the circuitry, the dreams that echo outside your own mind. The coral is not just living here, it's recording here. It's reflecting here, and with enough input, it responds. Maybe it always has. You sit in silence as the melody continues, no longer Tavy's alone, no longer the crystals alone. It's yours now, too. The choral station has added you to the composition. One more thread in the web of strange symphony. The lights dim. Not out of necessity, but out of understanding. Time to let the choral keep singing. You close your eyes and listen. You wake up on the listening deck. You don't remember falling asleep. You don't remember the moment the resonance faded, or the exact point when your thoughts stopped sensing with the choral's melodies. All you know is that your neck's a little sore and Sprout is balanced on your chest like a judgmental lemon. It projects a quiet message. You hummed in your sleep. It was cute. And slightly off-key. You groan, stretch, and peel yourself out of the coral-formed seat. The walls are warmer now, as if they've stored your dreams overnight. There's a faint shimmer in the air, the afterglow of resonance pulses still playing out in the background systems. Your wristband logs a memory spike. During the night, while you slept, the station dreamt with you. You step back into the corridor. The lights flicker, but not with urgency, more like blinking eyelids after a nap. Somewhere in the West Hall, a clanging sound suggests someone is attempting breakfast. Possibly with a wrench, possibly on purpose. You're just about to head to the atrium when a soft chime dings from your band. Gravity fluctuation detected near Sleeping Bay. Status, localized storm. Severity, gentle but disorienting. You blink. Storms don't usually happen here, not unless something is deeply wrong, or the coral is in the mood to yawn in a dramatic spiral. Still, protocol is protocol. You drift through the upper ring corridor toward the sleeping bays. As you float, the gravity shifts subtly a tilt in your center of balance, like the station is leaning sideways through an idea it hasn't quite finished having. The walls curve more steeply here, and the bioluminescent strips flicker in patterns that vaguely resemble sleep cycle EEGs. You pass familiar doorways, a snoring botanist's quarters, a room full of musical moss, and one unit entirely devoted to historical reenactments of arguments that never actually happened. At the entrance to the bay, the lights dim further. The floor tilts upward, gravity dips, then surges gently. Not violently, just enough to confuse your inner ear. You brace against the coral bulkhead and glance around. The sleeping bay, a large open chamber lined with moss hammocks, memory blankets, and one truly suspicious beanbag chair is currently pulsing, literally. The entire floor breathes in a lazy, non-threatening rhythm, like a snoring manta ray. The air ripples. Small floating particles drift upward instead of down. Someone's toothbrush floats by like a ghost on a quest. Sprout floats in beside you, scans the room, and chirps. Local gravity destabilization confirmed. Coral is dreaming again. Suggests passive observation unless possessions begin orbiting. You raise your hand. What does dreaming again mean, exactly? Sprout projects a diagram, a series of concentric rings showing a coral growth pattern around the base of the station's S resonance chamber. Apparently, the coral responds to collective dream states by adjusting its physical structure subtly, slowly, and sometimes by turning bedrooms into floaty fun houses. You drift closer to one of the hammocks. Inside, a crewmate is gently twirling in their sleep, mouth open, hands curled like tiny dream antennas. Above them, a spiral of floating objects orbits lazily. A sock, a data disk, an old photo of a dog wearing goggles. In the center of the room, the gravity forms a pocket, a little gravity eddy, like an edgeless tide pool. You float into it, your body weightless, your mind, briefly, even lighter. And then you hear it again. That 5-note melody, barely audible, vibrating not through air, but through gravity. Like the station is humming in mass, not sound, a tone made of tilt and shift. A lullaby written in motion, the hammocks sway in time. You place your hand on the coral wall again, warm, soft, alive. It pulses once, then stops. Sprout beeps, storm subsiding. Coral achieved emotional exhale. You float back toward the doorway. Residents begin to stir slowly, lazily, as if roused by a particularly gentle drum solo. Someone mutters about their missing slippers. Another asks if dreams can be contagious. No one has a good answer. You leave the chamber, gravity gradually normalizing with each meter. Behind you, the coral goes still again, but the song remains in your bones. You glide slowly back through the central atrium, body readjusting to stable gravity like it as an old song you've forgotten how to hum. The coral arches stretch high above you, dim now to a warm amber glow. The last decorations from the coral eclipse still drift through the air, a few rebellious ribbons, one slightly overconfident cloud moth, and a string of star-shaped lights tangled hopelessly around a potted empathy fern. You don't untangle it. The fern seems to like the attention. By unspoken agreement, the station is in wind-down mode. The post-eclipse buzz has softened to reflective calm, and the air carries the scent of lukewarm tea and sponge cake made from root algae. Someone's playing a slow jazz loop in the northeast ring. Elsewhere, you swear you can hear soft snoring through the walls. You drift into your own quarters. The hammock welcomes you like an old friend, remolding itself to your posture with the creak of familiarity. Sprout parks itself on your bedside perch, folds its tiny propellers, and powers into low idle with a soft BZZT that sounds suspiciously like good night. You stare up at the ceiling. The coral above you has grown again, thin, petal-like ridges unfolding in a spiral pattern. You recognize the shape from the memory garden, from the biopod circuits, from the listening deck. The station is sensing itself, not just growing, harmonizing, and you're a part of the song now. You tap your wristband one last time and open Tavi's message again. You let the 5-note signal play once more, not for data, not for analysis, just to be with it. It's a lullaby now. It always was. As the final note lingers in the air, the coral ceiling pulses, and then, softly and possibly, it responds with a harmony you've never heard. Not an echo, but continuation. It knows the song. Outside your quarters, the coral begins to hum a low vibration threading its way through the walls, a resonance. The lights dim a little more. The gravity slips just enough to let your shoulders float a touch off the hammock's weave. You feel the station breathing. You feel your heartbeat aligning with it. You feel the silence between notes, and then you feel the whole choral structure exhale. Not a mechanical action, not a life support system, a breath. As if it has waited all this time for someone to ask the right question. As if it's been dreaming of this harmony long before you ever arrived. You close your eyes. You think about memory flowers blooming from old regrets, about vending pods that whisper, about glittery cloud moths, about Sprout's mildly rude bedtime commentary, about Tavy and their signal from the edge of mapped space. You think about the station and how somehow this coral labyrinth of snacks and dreams and emotional humidity has become your home. The light fades, the song softens, and the station sings you to sleep. The ceiling continues its slow, spiraling glow, pale pink, folding into silver, folding into something deeper, like dusk underwater. You don't open your eyes. You don't need to. The air around you is perfectly still now, dense with that quiet hum that makes the mind go quiet. Your breath slows. The weightless hush of choral silence fills the chamber like velvet poured into your chest. You let it cradle you. Let it unwind the last curls of thought. No urgency here, no answers to chase. Just the warmth of being small inside something vast and gently curious. Outside, the stars slide past the station, but you no longer track them. Time does not matter here. You have drifted beneath it, through it, past it. The choral hums again, just once a final note held long and soft. You drift, wrapped in dreams not entirely your own, held in rhythms older than thought. And as sleep takes you, so does the melody carrying you into darkened water, into soft light corridors, into memory gardens and vending songs, into the living hush of a station that listens and breathes and remembers you, exactly as you are.